Welcome back to the Police Recruiting Show, sponsored by Safeguard Recruiting. As usual, I have Doug Larson, CEO and founder at Safeguard Recruiting, and we give you weekly tips and tricks to bring your recruiting and staffing exactly where it needs to be. We're going to get a little bit off target today. We usually give you success stories and topics of the week and some questions that come in. Obviously, send your questions in safeguardrecruiting.com. or hit us up on Facebook or LinkedIn. But this week, I saw an article that I have seen far too often, Doug, and it goes to this issue of, we have a police recruiting crisis. Now, Doug, when we keep hearing the words police recruiting crisis, why is that not helpful?
Yeah, it's not helping, right? It's almost giving an out as to, we can just blame, hey, we don't have enough people wanting to work for us, and it's the media, it's whatever the excuse is this week.
Yeah, I'm not even nice about it. To me, from a leadership perspective, it's just an excuse. Like when you say something's a crisis, it seems it's unsurmountable. So we would try a few things, whether it's our, a show from a few weeks ago, we tried some billboards or bus ads or whatever, some websites and videos, and it's not working. Must be a crisis. Nothing we can do. And I'm here to tell you, and Doug has said it before, there's no shortage of people that want to be in law enforcement, period. They've got the data to prove it. Reach out to Doug and Safeguard Recruiting and they'll show it. But I saw another article that went to this here in 2024. We're still hearing this, and we are 4 years post 2020. We're still seeing the articles. Here's the title of the article. It's on governing.com. So it's a government news website. Here's the title of it. We'll put the link in the show notes. Why it's so hard to recruit police officers. And here's the byline. Many big city departments are short of officers. Yes, a lot are short of officers, on average 20 to 25%, although Doug has seen that turn around with those that have hired him. And it says this, it's not a new problem, but young people seem to be shying away from the field. Let me stop right there, Doug, and let me have you address that. Are young people shying away from law enforcement? And keep in mind, folks, Doug has the data. They've run hundreds of campaigns. They've sent thousands of candidates to departments. So what do you say about that, Doug?
No, I don't think that's true. There is an awful lot of interest in law enforcement. There's a lot of people that want to get into law enforcement. Now, we can go down through a whole talk about generations and how long people want to stay in particular jobs. That's a whole different show. But as far as interest in law enforcement, there is an awful lot. And if you're not getting enough interest, let's address how you're reaching out to people, how you're generating that interest in your department.
Yeah, here's the topics of the article. Here's a direct quote. Law enforcement has yet to recover from a workforce decline due to the pandemic. Now, Doug, last I checked, I don't think we had massive people leaving during the pandemic, but they're, once again, just like the private world trying to blame the pandemic, they're bringing us in law enforcement. And they also blame protest against police. And now this is 4 years ago, 4 years ago, sometimes even longer. And we're still using this as an excuse. Any words of wisdom after hearing that?
Yeah, it's we've been hearing this for quite some time, right? And the difference here is how people approach the field of law enforcement. And there used to be more people that would on their own proactively come through the door, fill out an application, chase down departments, want to be applied. That's not how people look for jobs now. That's not how people get into different careers, right? They do it a little differently, and they do it more online, and there's a different presence. We all got a phone in our hand. We all got computers right at the ready. So there's just a different way to reach out to people and make those contacts.
It goes on to blame that young people are concerned about pay. They're concerned about potential danger. They want to do jobs remotely. Part of that may be true, but that, in my opinion, is not affecting law enforcement. It also talks about that despite trying to tighten the recruitment processes and despite the offering bonuses, that it doesn't seem to be getting any better. Here is the elephant in the room, Doug, because we've heard all these excuses before. That article pretty much hit every excuse we've seen for 4 years, with the exception of blaming politicians. We've heard all the excuses. Here's a little tip. Could it be all of that? Or could we be looking at recruiting in a way the way we used to before all of that, before the new generation, before the society sort of changed dramatically, right? And I've said this before. When I applied 30 years ago, I waited 6 months and I got a letter in the mail. Didn't hear anything for 6 months. We see departments today that still treat the candidates like that. They don't communicate to them. They don't give them opportunities to succeed. It's still an attitude of, we're going to make this as hard as possible for you to get onto our department. And if you do that in today's society, man, yeah, you may be struggling, but there are ways to overcome that and do it a little bit differently, is there not?
It certainly is, and you hit it right on the head. And if you go back through and look, Travis, you're in a multi-generation law enforcement family. So look at the way your father went and applied for jobs. Completely different the way you apply for jobs. Now you've got kids that are eligible to get into law enforcement. They're going to go about it a different way also, and the way they're communicated with. And so there's a lot of changes that take place here, and there's a lot of changes that take place with generations and the way people are contacted, and we need to adapt to that, right? We need to change our messaging. We need to be more flexible. We need to be more inviting into law enforcement. We shouldn't make it hard to apply for our department. We shouldn't make it hard to get communication back on where I am in the process. We shouldn't make the process 6 months long, because people will fall out. They'll go to another job, they'll go to another industry, and you're not just competing against other law enforcement departments. And that's what a lot of departments think is, hey, we're just competing with each other. That's not the truth. You've got all other industries that are out there, and they can pivot and they can move a lot quicker than we can in law enforcement. So we've got to keep that communication there, but we've got to be a lot more flexible, in my opinion, in the whole process, and more inviting to people, make it easier for them to come in. It's always, I go back to, if a business makes it hard for me to give them money, I don't give them money. You don't make me chase you down to give you money. And that's the same thing in recruiting law enforcement officers. Don't make it extremely hard for them to get employment with your department.
Yeah, everybody here is listening has seen a product online and they went, oh, I'm going to buy that. And they start clicking around and then it gets confusing. And what do? Abandon cart. Everyone here listening's done that. And it's a similar premise. It's a great premise. Here's why I can very confidently tell you the article is not being honest about what's going on. They think they are, but they're just not. Because if there was truly a widespread problem, the way they're describing, Doug, when you went into a department to help them, it wouldn't work. I mean, when you go into a department, you evaluate what they're doing, you change the processes up, you go out and you get candidates the way you do it, you bring the names in and you nurture them, you put all this in place, it just wouldn't work because there's a recruiting crisis. But you have seen widespread success. So what's going on here, and I'm just going to say it, you may not like it. It's not there's a recruiting crisis. It's just a crisis on how we're recruiting. Are we doing this the right way?
Yeah, you're right, Travis. There's a process issue here and an adaptation issue, and it's not necessarily the fault of the departments or the recruiters, the chiefs, the sheriffs. And let's just dive backwards in this a little bit. And people don't go into law enforcement because they're going to specialize in recruiting, in digital marketing, in marketing, and developing they don't, and they don't have the skill set. And a lot of recruiters come into this position and look at it, Travis. Where do they get their training? Where do they get their training on how to do this? And how do they grow in that spot? Because there's not a lot of that available out there. So I don't want to say that departments are doing it wrong, or they're not trying hard enough. That's not the case. It's just sometimes you need to have a specialist come in and consult, train, do certain aspects of the job for you, and then you'll be successful, because maybe that's not a skill set that is in your department, and there's nothing wrong with asking some help. So I think it's more of a process, an adjustment, a mindset change that needs to take place to make this, to fill these voids that departments have. There's manpower shortages where there's mandatory overtime going on, and we can get the interest there and we can get people on the road.
Well, you're right, Doug. I could tell you how we train recruiters because I was a commander of a recruiting unit a number of years ago, and here's how they did it. You do what the last guy did, and he did what the last person did, and they did what the last person did. So there's no official training part of it. That's why you guys have rolled out a seminar, because you got that idea. You were on location, and one of the recruiters said, I'm new to this position, and there is no training to get. I came here to this seminar, but there's no training. So you've actually put that seminar online, and it is very detailed on what to do and how to succeed.
Yes, we put that seminar online. We're working on some other ones. We come out on location if necessary, and we'll either do training, we'll do seminars, and we'll help. And there's another area why we've just put ourselves out there. If you got questions, you need help, you need somebody to look at what you're doing, or I'm running ads, but they're not working for me. Why is that? And there could be some verbiage issues. There could be some cadence and how you're changing them out. We'll take a look at that stuff and help you out, because there's a lot of little specialties in here. And then when you're dealing with recruiting and employment, there's a lot of rules that go with it. And the last thing you want to do is get yourself in trouble or get yourself, kicked off any of these services because you violated some of the terms.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I want to end on a positive note, because I know you work with the large client, top 10 city client. They were bleeding people. They were losing people. They had thrown a lot of money and effort towards it. The recruiting was going down. In the first month, Doug, you increased them by 1,500 people just by looking at what they're doing, changing a few things up, and putting all the pieces together. And just like that, within a month, it wasn't a month, they were getting 400 or 500 a week immediately, but over the course of a month, they got up over 1,500 people.
Yeah, 1,500 people, and you could just keep going higher if you wanted to.
Yeah.
There is a lot of interest in this profession. This is a great profession. And I think the message here is just, we need to adjust processes and improve. What you got to do is you got to take a look internal. Is my recruiting current? And how do I know that if I'm current or not? So I would encourage people to reach out to successful departments, reach out to, get some training, make sure you are current with the latest standards and you've adjusted processes, communications, and you're keeping up to date, because people want to work for you. There's a lot of good candidates out there.
Well, the easiest way to do that, to know if you're current, Doug, is right on your website, safeguardrecruiting.com. You guys will give a free consultation. Hit the link, and it won't cost them a dime. You guys will take a look at them and talk to them and give them a free consultation on what's going on. And here's why Doug Larson and the crew are worthy of that. You've run hundreds of campaigns. You have a ton of clients. You know with that data what works and what doesn't work. And these people listening might as well leverage that, right?
Yeah. Learn from the process, what we've learned through years of experience. Don't go and recreate the wheel in this. And we're glad to consult. We're glad to help. And it just boils back to being part of law enforcement, right? We always helped other departments, other agencies around the country, gave some feedback. I can't kind of get that out of my system, even though we are a business, but we are glad to take a look and give some advice.
Great stuff. Doug Larson, Safeguard Recruiting. Thanks for being here. And if you've been listening or you've been watching, thank you. And we'll see you next week.